In this video, we're talking about the muffler or the silencer. So we've worked our way along the exhaust journey, covered all the parts, and really the final part of the exhaust, as the gas makes its way along, is the muffler. After that, the exhaust gases escape into the atmosphere. Now, the muffler has the job of reducing or changing the noise of the vehicle. So in this episode, we don't have any complicated chemistry. We're talking raw noise, reducing it, making it sound good. Now, the muffler or the silencer is not needed to run the vehicle. We could take the silencer straight out of this exhaust system, replace it with a pipe, the vehicle would run absolutely fine. The muffler is required only for the comfort of really you as the driver, your passengers, and also for everybody else around you, because without a muffler, an engine is just incredibly noisy. Now, there's a lot of sources of sounds from a vehicle. If you imagine a vehicle rolling down the road with the engine firing, the sounds are going to come from the intake gases being sucked into the engine, kind of swoosh vacuum type sound. We've also got moving engine parts, pulleys and belts moving around. We've got the valves opening and closing, that tick 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 of valve noise that you'll hear. We have the detonation inside the combustion chamber, and then we have the expansion of exhaust gases as they flow out of the engine and along the exhaust system. And finally, we have the motion of the road wheels against the surface of the road. Now, you would expect that the majority of sound coming from a vehicle would come from these tens of thousands of explosions happening every minute inside the cylinders here. Actually, that's not the case. The majority of the sound comes from the expansion of the exhaust gases. So as this exhaust valve opens, those hot gases, they expand out. And that's happening every time there's a combustion stroke, every time there's an exhaust stroke, those gases expand and create the sound of the exhaust. Incredibly loud, and that's why the muffler is vital to reducing the overall sound of a vehicle. So on this vehicle, we have really two muffler type devices. We have this smaller one at the front, which is more of a resonator. It gives the exhaust that kind of deep rumble, a deep note, a sporty sound. And then we have this one, the main muffler, which has the job of reducing the amount of noise coming off the exhaust. So the noise level of a vehicle is regulated. On the road, it's regulated by governments. So in Europe, we've got the EU. In the US, you have federal government and state regulations on the amount of noise that a vehicle can give off. And that applies to production vehicles. In the racing world, vehicles are generally also regulated. So a typical value would be 100 decibels at 100 feet away from a racing vehicle. Now, Formula One, they have no regulations on noise whatsoever. But in other racing sports, other categories, they do have rules on noise emission from vehicles. So the muffler is designed to hit those noise regulations. So a good muffler will not only reduce the exhaust sound, but it also tunes that sound. So you may want to boost certain frequencies while reducing others. And we do this all the time with music. If you think about a graphic equalizer on a hi-fi, you would tend to tune down this kind of tinny high notes and boost the bass end. And it's usually the same situation with an exhaust system. So at the manufacturer, the engineers will measure the raw output, the raw sound coming off the engine, and then they will design and specify the muffler to reduce and boost certain of those frequencies to create the sort of sound that they expect. So really what we've got here is it's basically a harmonically tuned container that produces the exhaust sound that we like. Now, one important thing to note is that there's a limit to how much you can massage an exhaust sound, because ultimately the exhaust sound is driven by the characteristics of the engine. And that's why, if we listen to some different exhaust sounds, you know that there's a specific sound. We've got the deep rumble, the burble of a V8 engine. Then we've got the potato type exhaust sound of a Harley Davidson. Potato, 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 potato. Iconic exhaust sounds. And then you've got a rotary engine like the RX-8, the Renesis engine from there. It has a brrrr type sound. It's exhaust karaoke with Alex. The sound of a vehicle is absolutely a key part of the driving experience, but more than that, it's a key feedback mechanism for the driver in knowing when to change gear. As always, I think the best thing for us to do is to get one of these, chop it open and see what's actually inside there and use that to understand how it works. So we've got one of these, we've got one of these in the scrap room. Let's go over there, try and find them, bring them in, hack them up, see what's going on.
Look at this. I think we're going to cut this open and find the hole inside has rusted out. Hopefully there's something to see in there. I forgot. I've already cut this one open. I was so curious when we were making the 3D model. I already hacked this one up. So we'll talk about that later. But for now, let's chop open this main muffler. Let's see what we've got in here. There's no spot welds. Sometimes they're spot welded. You can see, actually, if you look at this from the side, you can see there's two ridges, which means that there's baffles here and here. If we feel along here, looks like there may be the only two baffles in there. I would expect these to be spot welded to the actual muffler housing, muffler jacket they call it. Anyway, let's get the grinder out. Whoa, lovely fresh grinding disc. This tool, well, not this tool, this is just an angle grinding disc, but this tool is, I think, one of the most useful tools. Cordless grinder. My God, it's so useful. The hassle of getting a grinder out, plugging it in. I don't know, for some reason, the fact that not that I can get this wheel off the top. Let me find a wrench. Well, that's the wrong size. Having said how brilliant this thing is, I now can't get the wire wheel off. And in fact, obviously, I've lost the wrench that comes with the grinder. First thing, as soon as you get one of these out of the box, just throw the wrench in the bin because you're never going to find it again. We need a wrench that is thin enough to fit on here. That one's not good. Behind the scenes with Alex, you see how this series takes like 3 years to make. It takes me a week to get the grinder into pieces. Anyway, yeah, one of these cordless grinders, super useful. It's just ready to hand. In fact, I'd like two. One with a permanent cut-off wheel in there, one with a permanent wire wheel. Very rarely use a grinding wheel. Now, of course, where have I put the actual locking things? All right, we're missing a piece. I like this thing so much, I'm going to clean the rust off. It deserves a bit of love. Brute force safety first, brute force second. There's like 20 years worth of nasty hydrocarbons and all sorts inside here, so I'm actually going to don a breathing mask here. These little paper masks, no good at all. This is what you need. Invest in one of these. Waha! Feel invincible in this stuff. Oh, nice cup of tea. Too late for a cup of tea. Right. We'll chop this here, and then we can unfold it. Maybe. Maybe not. Let's chop it on the top here. Let's just chop this. Let's cut it something like this. Precision fabrication coming up. There we go. Need another battery. We're basically in. Nearly there. Pretty sure we're in there. Woo! Smoking. There's not much left to see, really. Looks like a shipwreck. Okay. Now, apart from the fact that this one looks like it's spent 20 years in the sea, we've actually hit